We are live. Lynn, thanks for being here today on my Veteran Experience podcast. I appreciate it. And for those of you who will be digging into this, Lynn and I are classmates from the Naval Academy. So we go back 2 or 3 years. It's been a couple years anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, so please tell everybody kind of, where you're from, where you grew up, how you ended up at the Naval Academy and into the Navy, and then kind of where you are today.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Great to be here with you. So a little bit the story about how I got to the Naval Academy. I was born in Vietnam, South Vietnam, in Saigon to be exact. And then when Saigon fell in 1975, my mom took us. My dad was a colonel in the South Vietnamese Army. And when Saigon fell, he was able to get us onto a plane that left Saigon on the day that Saigon fell. And so I came to the United States through, the refugee camps and in Pennsylvania, and then was sponsored into an American home. This is a great coincidence. I don't know whether you know General Chuck Horner. He was the second command of Desert Storm.
I know the name. Yes.
He was my family sponsor, and he sponsored us in, took us in. It was amazing on that. And then we left, and then eventually I moved up to Annapolis. And I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, go through school there. And while I was in Annapolis, we constantly back then, we go into the Naval Academy yard, crab fishing, do all those things like a regular public. And I love the Naval Academy. So during my senior year, junior year, more so, I just applied. I just applied for the Naval Academy, and I got in. And I think the impetus for joining the Naval Academy was not so much that I love the academy, but it's more so if I look back at my my time when I first came to the United States. Back then I didn't hardly speak any English, and I know through into an American public school, I could not understand a lot of the subjects area. The only subject I mastered was math, because I didn't need the instructor to show me anything. I was able to figure it out. And I remember that culture shock when I first joined was just incredible. And one of the class I went through is American history. And through that class, I learned about how during the Vietnam War, how much the American public was against that war. And growing up as a kid, I did not get the perception in Vietnam. I did not know how much the American public. I just know that the American GIs were very helpful, very grateful. Many times that I was able to beat them. And so when Vietnam fell and the U.S., the American government sponsored us over, I grew up in a very, provide a lot of support for us when came to the United States. I'm very grateful for this country. And just like when you talk with Kimberly, she was very grateful for the country. I am also grateful for the Americans, for the U.S. government and everything that's done for my family. And I felt an obligation to pay back. And because of that, I say, okay, I'm going to apply and see if I can get in. And with God's blessing, I was able to get in and got into the Naval Academy class of '86 with you. Well, let me step back a little bit. The one thing, I was so naive back then. I didn't have my dad was stuck in Vietnam. He went through the communist concentration camp while I was in the U.S. And so it was very difficult to master everything that you need. I did not know you need to be an American citizen to apply for the Naval Academy. I just applied for it, and I didn't have anybody to coach me along. And the Navy saw that, and they said, okay, we'll send you to NAPS. That's how I end up at NAPS.
And we were at NAPS together.
Yeah, we were at NAPS together. Yeah, and got the American citizenship that day. I don't remember that day, but on the day I swore in as American citizen, my platoon gave me a hazing. Welcome to.
Yeah, it's interesting because that happened. I was involved with one as well. There was an individual at NAPS with us, and you may remember him. He was from Jamaica.
Oh, okay.
And he was from actually a military family in Jamaica, and his mother had moved to Washington, D.C. Well, he ended up getting his citizenship while we're at NAPS, and we did a sort of a hazing as well. I think we like feathered him or something. There
Yeah,
was something
I think
probably.
I went through the same. It was a enjoyment, and after I got my U.S. citizenship, then I came to the Naval Academy. At the academy, I I selected the system engineering, and as you know, that's one of the tough major there. And then when I graduated, my intention was to be a pilot, when I graduated, but my eyes went bad toward a junior year, and so left was Navy nuclear. So I select service nuke,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
then went to nuke school, and then joined the fleet and did my tour. So that was how I got to Annapolis. So
Now, so you did, so you were a nuke power officer, and did you do like the 5 years or commitment
yep,
from Navy, and then you transitioned
yeah,
off of
and then
active
I went.
duty at that
Yep,
point?
yep. I went into after I went to the reserve after that, and then did my time in the reserve. And then if I could go back to the one thing just about the Naval Academy, when I was at the Naval Academy first year, back then we had the what is it, the you know equal rights, what is it? I forgot what it's called. But anyway, it felt like I got in because of minority status.
Oh, okay. So like
Yeah,
affirmative action
for
or
affirmative
recruiting
action. Yeah,
for to bring in certain
yeah,
minority groups. Yeah.
yeah, and I felt guilty about that somehow. So
Hmm.
I need to come in here and prove myself, and so that one's the reason I selected system engineering degree. So it's like, if I can make it in system engineering, and I proved to myself that I deserve to be here. So I did. So
You make it hard on yourself to give back, so to speak.
yeah, and
See, I think we need more people with your attitude, Lynn, on giving back and having gratitude. But
yeah,
well, let's go. Well, I'd like to go back now to where you kind of began the story and being in Vietnam and South Vietnam, and then so when you first said this, I was wondering, okay, what happened to your father? So,
oh,
and then you did mention it, kind of that he ended up, he stayed, but he got the family away, and I was a young boy, a 10-year-old. Well, I was 12 at the time, actually, in 1975 when all this occurred. But my father was on the USS Midway
ah,
that was doing the evacuation of Saigon in 1975. And I remember he came home and he had a pamphlet that had been printed out. It was Operation Frequent Wind.
mm-hmm,
And I remember it specifically reading through it. And then I saw pictures and my father shared the story. So they had emptied the carrier of the
yeah,
aircraft, and about half of the carrier's personnel they just left in the Philippines, and then they went off of Saigon, and then they just started ferrying people back
mm-hmm,
and forth from South Vietnam onto the ship. And they set up sort of a tent city in the hangar bay, and all the refugees were there and everything else. So, as there's been a lot of documentaries done on this time frame. There's the famous photo of the helicopter and the person
yeah,
reaching up to try and get up there. But I just remember as a kid, and then we moved to Florida, Pensacola after uh, that time in Japan, and I ended up playing soccer with some Vietnamese immigrants
mm,
during my time in high school who had immigrated to Northwest Florida, and there was a big controversy back then too of in the shrimping industry. Many of them got into shrimping, and they
yeah,
were competing with the
yeah,
local businesses, and it
yeah,
became an issue of like, hey, these Vietnamese came here, now they're competing with us in this industry, which was so. But digging a little bit more into that, so you were put on an aircraft. Your father was able to get the family out, and obviously it must have been and continued to be really hard that your father wasn't with you, and then so talk a little bit about that experience, and then come into the U.S. and wow, a future general officer was sponsoring, his family sponsored you, and then where was that and how did that happen?
yeah. Well, when I left Vietnam, we were fortunate enough. We were on one of C-130 Hercules. We flew out, so we didn't have to land on the carrier. I remember seeing those pictures that you're talking about the Midway. But we landed in Philippines, and then we're in the camp, and then we landed in Pennsylvania after that. And then my uncle at that time, he was an F5 Vietnamese Air Force officer, he knew General Horner. They were friends.
Oh,
And then so when we were in Pennsylvania, I think he reached out to back then he was a colonel.
okay.
He said, "Hey, would you sponsor this family?" And he did. He sponsored us, and we were living in at that time. He was I think he was stationed at the Pentagon, so we were living in Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay. So what does that mean, sponsoring you? Like what is that?
Yeah, I think it's like they took you into the house and they gave you bed and
Oh, okay.
they
Wow. So
actually
completely.
yeah they put us in and we were able to live with their family with his son and daughters and stuff like that. We were down in the basement there. It was great. It was a terrific experience. And then we were there, and then I don't remember how long we were there, but maybe 6 months or 7 months. And then my uncle, who was working, he was working in Bancroft Hall Chow. He was doing one of those crew that bring out the food for the shipment. And so that's how he was staying at Annapolis. And they say, "Hey, come up here and stay with." And we rented an apartment up there and stayed in Annapolis since then.
So was this the same uncle that knew Horner from?
Yep. Yep.
Wow. So he knew Horner from Horner's work in Vietnam as a Air Force officer.
Yes. Yes.
And then your uncle, you said, was flying
F5.
F5s. Okay. Wow. And so was it your mother, yourself, and?
Yeah. So we have my mother. I have two sisters, older sister and a younger sister, and then a brother. The four of us.
So all of you were in the Horner's basement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And for how long was that?
6-7 months, I think. I don't
Okay.
remember. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a great experience. Yep.
And I'm sure you keep in touch with that family.
Yeah. Every year. Well, I don't know where they're at right now. They're in Arizona, I know, but we've been getting Christmas card from them. But I think lately they lost touch with them. Yeah. So.
Okay. Wow. And then you moved to Annapolis. So your uncle was, wow, from Air Force pilot in South Vietnam to working at Bancroft Hall for King Hall.
King Hall. Yep. Yes, King Hall. Yeah. So he took me in there one time, and I look at this massive King Hall Chow Hall, and I was like, wow, they were feeding.
Yeah.
All the midshipmen, so it was great.
And you could never imagine you would be there eating yourself at one point, huh?
No, I would never imagine. To be honest with you, when I apply, I say, there's no way, no chance that I'll be able to get in. There's no way, But when I first saw the acceptance letter to go to NAPS, I was like, whoa, I'll take it. And here's another naive item. You know how you, when we get to the academy, you know how the first time they toss us in the swimming pool and tread water for 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
I sank. I could not swim to save my life. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And so they put me on remedial swimming squad. Yeah. During PLEP year, you're tied to death, and after hours you got to go to this swimming to learn how to swim. And then I did, and I was able. Then I love swimming.
Yeah, swimming's kind of an important thing for a naval officer, right?
You telling me? Yeah.
Well, I remember as you bring up that memory, we had a few, but we called aqua rocks. Guys who couldn't
was me.
Swim. You were one of those, and I was a lifeguard in high school, so I was a pretty good swimmer. But yeah, I remember the eyes on some of these people's faces when they had to jump in the water and tread and swim with a uniform on and things like that. And people were like, "Wait a second," and then we would go, "Hey, you're in the Navy. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of water."
My mind was like, oh man, I wish I didn't think about that one. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you first came, so what age were you when you guys ended up getting out of?
I was 12.
You were 12. So yeah. So okay. So we're about the same age.
Yep,
we're the same. Yep. 1963, I imagine.
Yes. You're
all right, people. We're old. Don't rub it in. We're old.
We are old.
We're old now. And then you spent that brief period with the Horners, and then you moved to Annapolis. So you were about to start high school at the time, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And what high school did you go to there? Was it Annapolis High or?
Yep, Annapolis Senior High. Yep.
Okay. And how was that? Just kind of, you said, and I have some personal experience. My brother-in-law came from Korea at a teenage age and didn't really speak English at the time. And so how was that when you're just kind of learning English, you're trying to fit in, you're at a school, you're from Vietnam, and it's the late 70s where there's still a lot of attention on
Yeah.
her during our time in Vietnam. So how was that experience? And did it go well for you?
It, back then it was, I think there was, as you can imagine, there was some, racial friction
Hmm.
in high school. They were kids. And so,
Yeah.
it was interesting. Let me just say, it was interesting time. There's some great people that I was able to get to know. And one of the person that I became good friends is, of all the people, is Pete Owen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you were in high school with Pete.
Yeah.
Oh
So
wow.
Pete was there, and then we at the beginning of high school, and then we got lost. We lost touch. I went to NAPS, and then next thing in our indoctrination day at the academy, I saw Pete. I said, "No way!" And he was in Marines. He was enlisted Marines, and now he comes to the Naval Academy. And I was like, of all anyone in the world, he and I end up in the same company, Fund One, first
Wow.
company.
Wow.
I was like, what
Yeah.
is this? And so Pete has been great, and during the high school, Pete was helping me a lot
Oh,
to
good. Yeah. Okay. So you had
me around. Yeah.
some supporters and people who were not not treating you in an ill way, so to
Yeah.
speak. But so how about like your teachers and things like that? I mean, as you were looking at applying and going to school, were there some individuals that really kind of coached you and helped you through this process?
Yeah. I was my math teacher there. I asked him for his advice, his recommendation letter.
Hmm.
So he wrote me one. And that was it. Other than that, as I was sharing with you, in high school, math, back then they have individual studies. So
Hmm.
here's the, trigonometry book, go study yourself. Here's a test, go pick up the test, take the quiz. And that's all I did. All the math course, I took it by myself and just teach myself math. I didn't go into the classroom at all. And the other classes, I had people around, and then friends that were made, and then they helped me along through high school. So it was good.
There was a couple of other uh, individuals in our class from Annapolis High, right? Was Al Cantello son of Annapolis
Yeah,
High?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, lacrosse player that he was at Naps with us. He never did go to the Naval
Yeah.
Academy, but interesting. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at Naps, what was that like? I mean, you're now it's the military now. It's time to get hazed and get yelled at and everything else. And I'm
Uh,
sure all kind of crazy stuff. How was that experience for you?
it certainly, unlike you growing up in the military family, it was a learning experience. It was a learning experience being yelled at, being asked to do, running all these long. I was completely unprepared. Of all the people that's completely unprepared for the military, that was me. I didn't know how to swim. I was not very physically. I could not run. I could do all these things, but naps was. I think it prepared me before I get to the academy. I think of
Yeah.
all the blessing it was able to give me to naps, and I can understand the military, get myself in shape. By the time I get to the Naval Academy, I felt I'm much better physically, other than swimming,
Yeah.
physically, to go through the rigor of our plebe year. And so NABS was a terrific experience. Newport, Rhode Island, beautiful
Yeah.
place. So,
Yeah, it was and I don't think anybody's really prepared, even coming from a military family, even though, my dad had his moments of being a hard-nosed father, but he sort of directed me, to go to the academy and to apply and do all these things. But but nothing prepares you for, somebody getting in your face and yelling at you and demeaning you and, waking up at whatever time we were waking up and making your bed, all those sorts of things. But I had some of that
yeah,
discipline growing up, but there's nothing really prepared. But it's a great experience, and you're much better off plebe year for it.
yeah, yeah. And
As
I'm
you
so
know, we came in a little bit ahead of the game and knowing how to play the game as a plebe, right?
yeah, yeah. Uh, for the academy, I share with you right before we graduate in '86, the local newspaper wants to have a discussion with you. Back then we didn't have all these social application like Facebook or LinkedIn and Twitter. So the local newspaper said, "Hey, did you know that you're first Vietnamese to graduate?" So, no, I did not know that, and so I didn't think much about it, and now it's just something I'm honored. You know, during one of your one of those military recruitment sessions that you had at Microsoft, one of the guy that reached out, you know, he's class of '96, and wow, you graduated '86. Back then, there must hardly be any Vietnamese applying for the Naval Academy. So yeah, there was only one.
There's only one. You were the trailblazer. But it's such a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you're forced to leave a country as a young boy. You come to the U.S. You don't really speak English. You're having to go to school and learn the language and fit in and be successful. And you know, there's probably some people that didn't want you to be successful, made it hard on you because kids are kids, and you know, there's just people who are, you know, not nice people, and you weren't even a citizen, and you didn't even know that was part of the program of applying. And so you did all this, and you're the first. Wow, I didn't know that. So congratulations to you. That's awesome. That's a, like I said, it's just such a great story. And you know, this wasn't the plan when you were 9 years old. That, hey, next year we're heading to the U.S. to make this work. It was forced upon you. So makes it even a greater story, and the accomplishment is awesome. So, and then your time, and you know, you were in Fund 1. I was in Good Times 10. So we were in companies that were maybe not as hard as some others during our academy time, and people who know these things will remember that. And I know a bunch of individuals in Fund 1 that I still kind of keep in touch with. One of the fellow soccer players who actually passed, Dave Weir, was that was a shock when I heard about Dave. We you know, played soccer together, and then he was also a Marine aviator there in Southern California. So now, so your time, and then you were systems engineer, and then so you did your nuke tour. So where did you serve, and what?
Yeah, so I served in well, it was a cruiser on Truxton. It was first base in San Diego, and then move up to Bremerton. That's how I'm eventually settled in the Northwest up here. So
okay, wow, those CGN classes, huh?
Yeah, you remember.
Hey, I did my pro book every week, so I knew a little bit about the Navy ships, even though I went Marine Corps.
No, but the one interesting thing is that when I applied for nuke school, when we apply for that, for nuclear power, you have to go through security clearance, as you can imagine. But back then, my dad was still in concentration camp in Vietnam. You know, so then here his son applying for nuclear power school, and then so the scrutiny of, you know, the background check and all these, they asked my neighbors, they asked everybody, and I was able to get clearance to get into the nuclear power school. So after I got there, and I think we were able to sponsor my dad out back to the U.S. And I remember, you know, my mom would tell him that I'm in the U.S. the Naval Academy, but she has to send him in code because his letters are being reviewed, you know. So he couldn't.
So when you mentioned this earlier, that he didn't make it out and he was in concentration camp, I think these were re-education camps.
Re-education check,
yeah. So and but you're able to communicate in some way, you said. So how did you stay connected with your father over the years, and then how did it come to fruition? Like you say, you were able to sponsor. So tell that story.
Yeah, I could not. I know my mom and his brother and sister are staying in touch with him. My mom has back then her sister's still in Vietnam, and they communicated to her, and she goes and visit him, and then communicated out. I don't know the details of that, but he has a hint that I was in the Naval Academy, but he could not share that with his peers in the re-education camp, right? And so it wasn't until he came over, and I remember that day that, you know, I was able to see him because I was stationed in San Diego. I was in uniform. I flew to Portland, and he was able to meet me. That's the first time he's seen me in a uniform. And deep down he's proud of it. But it's just that I did not know that we kept a lot of a secret from him just to protect him while he was in camp, so they don't think that he has a son in the Naval Academy, especially in the nuclear program, to cause anything out of that. But it was great experience.
Yeah. What year was this when you were already active duty, it sounds like, and then
Yeah.
you guys were able to sponsor him and you met him in Portland?
Yeah, it was like I think 1988 or 89. 88.
88, okay. And then I imagine the whole family was there, right?
Yep. It was a great reunion, and thank to
Wow.
God he's still healthy. And it's amazing that he survived from
Wow.
75 to all that 86. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So,
And he is still alive?
yep, he's still alive.
Wow.
Still in Poland. Yep, he's still doing well.
All right.
It's amazing. So,
And where is he now?
he's in Portland.
Oh, he's in Portland. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. So
yeah.
pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I know it's something when you talk with Kimberly, something that's always stood out for me is, she was very grateful for this nation also, and so am I. And when we took the oath, we were willing to do anything to protect this country, and I'm willing to repay that debt that I owe to this great country. So.
Yeah, it's I almost wish more people shared that same gratitude for what this country gives us. So it's it's always great to hear it from somebody coming from somewhere else and then seeing kind of what opportunities been provided to you, and and it's been great. So you did your time and you just were on the ship. You're a CGN, you're new division officer for several years, and then you did your 5, because nuke schools takes a while, and then by the time you get to your ship, you're already lieutenant commander almost, sort of. And then when you transitioned, what was your transition like?
Well, you know what? That's another great story if I can share with you is when I transitioned. You went through Lucas recruiting back then, right? Yeah, you remember that? And we went through a lot of interviewing, and a lot of companies comes, and as I reflect on that, as I didn't want to go into the civilian force as a manager. Just like we learn in the Navy, we start out as enlisted, do everything that enlisted does, and you go slow up. I chose to be a field engineer with Siemens because I want to get my hands dirty, learn how to do that. I remember when I told my senior chief that, I say, "Senior chief, I'm going to be a field engineer," and he teased me, say, "Sir, do you even know how to use a voltmeter?" So,
that's right.
Because the whole time
you for a while, right?
The whole time you were there, you don't actually fix anything as an officer. You just watch.
You quite well.
Yes. And I was like, oh man, I got to learn how to do all these things, But I did well. I did very well at Siemens, and then after that, I say, I need to get my master's degree, so I got my MBA at UC Irvine, and then I went to I needed to change, so I went up to Silicon Valley to learn how to build semiconductor. For KLA 10 core, so we learned how to inspect the chips, and that was another great experience. Exposed me to another industry, and then from there, we decided to move up to the Northwest to be close with our parents. Then Microsoft recruited me up to Microsoft, so I've been with Microsoft. I joined Microsoft in 2003.
Okay. Yep. Wow. So when you were at Siemens, you were in Southern California. Is that right? Okay. Correct. And then from there, you went to Silicon Valley, and then with another company.
Correct. KLA 10 core is the company.
KLA. Okay, great. And then you were doing chips at that point, and then you came up this way, and so you say parents. So is your wife from this area up here as well?
Yeah, she's from Bellevue.
Oh, okay.
And then when I was stationed in Bremerton, that's how I met her. So.
Okay. Is she also Vietnamese?
Yes, she's also Vietnamese.
Oh, okay. Yep. Did you meet through like the Vietnamese community up here? Or?
Well, through my uncle that flew the F-5. So
your uncle was the connector, and
connect me.
He got you with a general officer, a
Yeah.
sponsor, and then Annapolis and everything else. Your uncle, you got to keep buying him beers for the
I
rest
know.
of.
Yeah. So he introduced us to it, and
Good for him.
yeah,
Good for the both of you.
yeah,
For her. And for you probably more importantly that
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, you found a lady that would put up with you like me. I'm grateful I'm that someone puts up with me, so that's
Yeah. So yeah. And then when during the reserve, I really got into naval intelligence.
oh, okay, so you stayed in the reserves the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
And
same
you were
reserve.
did you move over to the intel kind of specialty or
Correct. Correct. And that's where,
community?
if I look back, that's the area where I actually love as far as the Navy career is something I really excel at the intel side.
So tell
And
me a little bit about your reserve career. What were you doing across that time?
well, I did various, the reserve time is just more of, I was attached to the Naval Intelligence wing here in the Northwest, and then
Okay.
sometimes they move up, go over to the Pentagon and do all those things. It's just more like, it's a special unit that I was in, and then to give me more time. And then after so much time in the reserve, my wife said, you spent enough time. Let's just stop.
Right.
So I left the reserve and became inactive. What is it?
Right.
2000. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you could explain more, but you didn't have to kill me if you were going to tell me about your reserve intel time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a reserve career as well, retired in 2014. So it's
Yeah.
been it was I loved my reserve time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You yourself, you actually retired from the Marine before you go into reserve, right? Or
No. I did almost 6 years active and then
um.
went reserve. But
Okay.
then post 9/11, I ended up just doing a whole bunch of active time. but
Oh,
but
got it.
just on IA orders as a reservist being attached to active duty units is what I did
Yeah.
over that time frame.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. When 9/11 happened, I was like, "Can I go back? Can I go back?" And my wife said, "No, you're not. You're not doing that, all right. You're not gonna have a
Yeah,
wife to come back."
yeah, we moved a couple of times for my reserve time, but it worked out well. But it was hard. It was my wife met me when I was just a weekend reservist, so she didn't sign up for the active duty
Yeah.
portion that I put upon her at that time. So, well, let me ask you a couple things
Yeah.
on your kind of transition to civilian life, and then you kind of you've had this career in several companies. How did your military experience and play into your roles? And as you went from one company to another, was it something that you leveraged as part of your overall experience? And how do you think companies viewed it as well?
Um. Yeah. For me, when I was looking back at it, it's mainly I choose the position at the company based on if I like doing what they're doing. So, take for example, Siemens. Back then, MRI. The role is to support this research into MRI technology and supporting the research on that. So I look at MRI, just like nuclear power is at the atom level, MRI is a similar thing. And so I was like, oh, that's a nice, interesting technology. So I select that role purely on that. And I think from the military experience, I think we adapt very well. Every day when we get up, when we go to student watch, it's not like a clean slate of things that are going to happen, A, B, C, and D. Things happen, and you have
Mhm.
to deal with that. And I think that experience enabled me to try different technology. MRI is the first, and then semiconductor is the next one. I want to learn how the chip is being made.
Mhm.
And so based on that, I say, okay, next thing I'm interested to learn how chips are made. So I applied for Kelly Tancor back then through the recruitment team. Back then, it's also Lucas. I say, okay, I want to go to San Jose just to be closer to the Northwest back then. And I say, okay, what are the positions? And so one of the positions came as Kelly Tancor. I applied for that, learned a great deals from how the chips are being built, put on a bunny suit, go into the clean room,
Mhm.
fix things. Now I know how to fix things now.
Even
And
if you don't know the voltmeter, right?
yeah, it's like, I know how to fix things. I know how to troubleshoot things. And then after that, when it was asked to come to Microsoft, it's like, okay, let's go to Microsoft. And it was more focused on training. Now it's focused on how to train people. It was a brand new field for me. And then at Microsoft, another opportunity came up about retail stores and then data centers. So those are the sequence of items. I just purely focus on what I love, what I want to learn, and then just put my heart into that, find it, and then knowing full well that my experience in the military allows me to adapt and learn.
So back to so you looks like you used Lucas a couple times from your initial job and then transitioning to Silicon Valley. So Lee Cohen, I'm sure was
Yes.
your buddy down there at
Yeah.
I was in that industry. I was with Bradley Morris and
Ah,
Sean Bradley came from Lucas. So he was running Lucas military and then he started Bradley Morris and I joined them soon after they started within about a year of when Bradley Morris launched as a company. So, and then we knew all the individuals in this small industry. So I met Lee at some point, and then the Atlanta office is where I was located. All the Lucas folks there, we got to know them. In fact, we had an annual football game, flag football with those guys.
okay.
Fun. So, well, so what sort of so we're seasoned now. We've been around a while. We're both prior military, spent our time in reserve. So what sort of advice would you give to a transitioning service member? And, you spoke a little bit to it already about, follow your passion and the adaptability and flexibility that you learn being in the military. I mean, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
So any words of advice or that you would pass on to those who are transitioning?
I might sound for the guys leaving the military, it might sound very Microsoft culture like, but I really believe in, we at Microsoft we talk about growth mindset. And this is my belief and that sustained me throughout my career is just embrace that. Just there are times when you don't know exactly when you leave the military, whether you're an intel officer or you're nuke, you know how to how to troubleshoot all the give commands, you know how to do all these things in the military, but how do you translate that to a civilian role? And I think the way you translate that is to have the growth mindset. You're going to try something brand new. You don't know anything about it, but if you approach it that, be open to it. It's not going to be nice and pretty bowl for you. It might not turn out to be the right position for you, but give it a shot, right? Once you jump into that, you learn it and you say, hey, this is something I learned something new. Once you prove yourself that you can learn something new, you master that, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to try something else. I think it builds confidence in you. So you don't have to this fear of, I remember when I left the Navy, it's like, holy cow, I don't know how to do anything else other than give an order and navigate the ship from point A to point B.
Right.
That's all I know. But so I couldn't determine which way I want to go. And for me, I chose to start from the bottom, work my way up, so then I understand what being a leader in the civilian world is like. It's not you like an officer, you have an order, you tell somebody and you expect them to follow. In the civilian world, you don't have that concept. So you got to understand how to be able to understand from the work at the level and be able to translate that terminology when you become a manager. And I think that speak personally, having gone through the level of being a field engineer and slowly move up, it makes me a better leader, in my opinion. So.
No, that's awesome advice. So, because in this transition business, and I speak to a lot of people, I'm always passing on the advice that be humble
Yep.
and don't chase that VP title because you think you're entitled to it. So there's nothing wrong with kind of getting your hands dirty and learning the business that you're interested in and have some passion around, and it'll serve you well as you move forward in your career that you did that transition that way and you were kind of humble about it. And even though you said earlier, I knew how to get a ship from point A to point B and these sorts of things. I mean, you brought a lot more to the table from your education and your leadership opportunities as a young junior officer, and you're in a technical environment, which is, obviously another asset that you bring to the civilian world. So, but so yeah, and the growth mindset, I mean, it's sort of a new kind of phrase, but that's it's such an important kind of aspect of leaders, and being a constant learner, and being interested in, learning doesn't stop. You don't know everything.
Yep, exactly. You don't.
Especially in the tech industry, it changes, and there's a lot of smart people. I can't keep up. I'm not smart enough.
Yeah. I think a lot of the junior officers, they have a lot of skill set. Nowadays they have a lot of social media. They have a lot of ways that they can learn YouTube and other things. They have other channels that they can learn about it and use it and learn and improve themselves. So.
Well, great. Well, hey, man, it was awesome talking to you today and learning a little bit more. Even though we walked the same halls for a while, I was swimming maybe a little bit quicker than you back in the swim tank when they were
showing off. You're one of those people that's showing up.
when they were throwing you in and going, swim. I just, those were some funny sessions, and especially for those that were a little bit nervous. But no, it was great to hear your story. It's such an incredible story, and I'm proud to know you as a classmate and a fellow Microsoftie and a friend. So we could probably spend a couple hours talking about your experience coming to this country and growing up in a new environment, and you took full advantage of it, and that you have that gratitude is just such an awesome thing to hear. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. It was great talking. Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully we'll get a drink when everything back's to normal. So
exactly. Soon enough. All right. Have a great day.
Take care, man. All right. Thanks.